What if I told you that in just 2 Nigerian federal government budgets that we examined, we identified more than 54 billion naira in appropriations connected in one way or the other with religion, mosques, churches, Qur'anic schools, Christian schools, Islamic schools, pilgrimage institutions, roads leading to churches and mosques, solar lights around religious facilities, vehicles for religious organizations, and even projects appearing under government organizations whose core responsibilities seem to have very little to do with religion or even the projects that they are asked to embark on for those organizations. But here is where the story becomes even more sensitive. Of the 54.10 billion we're able to quantify, about 34.9 billion was classified as Islamic related, but 12.76 billion was Christian related. Approximately 915 million was interfaith. About 5.5 billion could not confidently be assigned to either Christianity or Islam. That means roughly 64.6% of the quantified total was Islam related, compared to approximately 23.6% classified as Christian related. The Islamic related figure is about 2.7 times the Christian related figure. Those numbers come from project by project examination of the 2023 and 2024 federal appropriation schedules. The database contains 258 quantified records included in the totals. But before anyone concludes that we have discovered 54 billion illegally handed to religious organizations, an important one is appropriate. These are appropriations. An appropriation tells us what government authorized in a budget. It does not prove that every naira was released. It does not prove that every project was executed. And it certainly does not by itself prove corruption. There's another limitation. Detailed project data available to us is strongest for 2023 and 2024. So what really do these figures tell us? This is what we examine today on the other side. Now, let's take a look at some of the actual provisions. And some of these allocations are straightforward religious institutions. The 2023 appropriation included, among other provisions, 200 million naira for pilgrims, operational support, 50 million naira for renovation of a Hajj camp and replacement of equipment, and 20 million for wireless internet and networking. The same budget contained allocations to the Christian pilgrims commission, including office renovation, computers, furniture, and pilgrim-related facilities. Nigeria has institutionalized state involvement in pilgrimage on both sides of the religious divide. But then there are constituency-type projects. The 2023 budget included 39 million naira for 3 Islamic schools in Goronyo. There was 100 million naira for Assembly Hall at Gwani Muhammadu Dan Gondoa Qur'anic College in Kano Central, and another 85 million for vehicles for the same Islamic college. Another project provided 100 million naira for the renovation of Jada Islamaya School. There was also 100 million naira for a multi-purpose hall and administrative block at a Tahid Fizul Quranic School in Argungu, Kebbi State. On the Christian side, we found 150 million naira for the construction of a church road in Suleja. You found 200 million naira for street light in Mount St. Gabriel Secondary School in Makudi. There was also 220 million naira for the building of infrastructure at St. Peter's College, Ida, and projects involving Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, and other Christian institutions. And now the question to ask is, why is the Islamic-related figure so much higher? Our database identifies 130 Islamic-related records against 90 Christian-related records for those years. But the monetary difference is even wider. Approximately 34.93 billion against 12.76 billion. What explains this? The first answer is education. The largest category in the entire database is Islamic, Arabic, and Quranic schools, accounting for approximately 20.5 billion, or almost 38% of the quantified total. By comparison, Christian schools and training institutions account for approximately 3.4 billion naira. The difference is enormous, but we should also be careful about what it means. Not every Arabic school is simply a place of worship, and not every Islamic school teaches only religion. Some provide conventional education alongside Islamic and Arabic studies. The National Board for Arabic and Islamic Studies itself functions as an education and examination body dealing with Arabic and Islamic education. Of course, efforts in the Ninth Assembly to create a similar institution for Christian education was not successful. Indeed, some Christian organizations even came out to say that that organization should not be established. And so the efforts to establish a national center for Christian education failed. Likewise, a Catholic or Methodist school may be religiously owned but provides ordinary education to children from different backgrounds. This is why the debate becomes even more difficult. Does this mean that the government favors Muslims? No. The figures by themselves do not prove intent. They do establish a large numerical imbalance in the appropriations identified, and that imbalance matters politically. It matters, for instance, because unlike the Muslims who have the Islamic and Arabic institutions recognized by government, funded by government year in, year out, the Christians themselves have not done much to create a center for Christian education that could work on the recognition of certificates issued by the large numbers of seminaries that exist in Nigeria. And therefore today, almost all the seminaries and Christian religious education schools have certificates that are not recognized by government because their examinations are not recognized, and also because their curriculums are not recognized by any established institutions. Those that want to award certificates that are recognized have had to get franchise from established schools or universities to have their education and certificates recognized. And that imbalance matters politically because in a country where religion already influences elections, appointments, regional identity, and perceptions of national belonging, government has a special responsibility to explain why one religious category appears to receive substantially more identifiable public resources than another. Without that explanation, the numbers can easily reinforce allegations that the state prefers one faith. But there is a major difference between saying data shows imbalance and saying the data proves deliberate discrimination. We can establish the first, but we cannot establish the second from the Appropriation Acts alone. And in any case, each number of the budgetary allocations that are in the budget come from constituency projects of members of the National Assembly. And the question could be asked, if Muslims love their religion so much that they take their zonal intervention projects or constituency projects to help in building their religious institutions, what has stopped the Christians from doing the same? But then that will bring another problem. Nigeria is frequently described as a secular country, but the Constitution uses a more precise language. Section 10 says, the government of the federation or of a state shall not adopt any religion as state religion. That is important. It does not literally say governments can never interact with religion. Nigeria also protects freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, and prohibits discrimination on religious grounds. So the constitutional question is more complicated. Building a borehole beside a mosque amount to establishing or supporting Islam? Obviously, not necessarily. Does rehabilitating a road leading to a Catholic school establish Christianity? Again, not necessarily. But what about constructing a purely devotional facility with public money? What about giving equipment directly to a religious association? What about funding a facility that's available only to members of one faith? And what point does public service become state sponsorship of religion? That boundary deserves a much clearer rule than Nigeria presently appears to apply. And now the National Assembly question. We come to one of the most important issues. Many Nigerians describe projects like this as National Assembly insertions. Appropriation database does not identify the sponsoring legislator for every religious project. So we cannot responsibly tell you that every mosque or religious project in this dataset was inserted by a senator or a house member. We cannot prove from this database alone that the majority were legislative insertions. That requires the original executive proposal. The National Assembly Amendment and the Final Appropriation Act need to be compared line by line. What we can say is that many projects carry the unmistakable geography of constituency politics. For instance, Kano Central Senatorial District, Ikunu Ini Federal Constituency, Niger East Senatorial District, specific villages, specific communities, specific religious schools. That raises a simple question. Why shouldn't the public be told who sponsored every single addition to the federal budget? Interestingly, government has already acknowledged weaknesses in constituency project implementation. The Federal Ministry of Special Duties says revised guidelines for zonal intervention and constituency projects were issued on September 20, 2023. Those guidelines require projects to be verified and certified by the ministry before contractor payments are made. And of course, in the present procurement process in Nigeria, only the MDS award the contracts to the organizations they want. Sometimes they may work under the influence of members. Most times they bear the responsibility of determining who gets the contract. But certification of whether a contractor billed what was approved is not the same question. Should the project have entered the federal budget in the first place? That is why another layer of guidelines is required. A religious sensitive constituency project should have to pass a clear public test. Who owns the finished assets? Can everyone use it? Is it education, healthcare, water, or transport, or purely devotional activity? Who nominated it? What institutions benefit? What religious organizations control it? And why should federal taxpayers pay for it? And this brings us to another part of the data. One 2023 project placed the construction of civic centers and an assembly hall at Methodist Primary School under the Industrial Arbitration Panel. Think about that. The Industrial Arbitration Panel exists to deal with trade disputes between employers and employees. Another line in the budget placed the supply of school materials to St. Stephen's School in Lagos under the Nigerian Institute of Mining and Geosciences. The institute's mandate is training and research in mining and geosciences. And our data set contains a University of Kafin Hausa Community Jumat Mosque under the Hadija Jamare River Basin Development Authority. River Basin institutions operate within Water Resource Center on irrigation, water supply, dams, flood management, and related development. The Federal Ministry of Water Resources described its mandate around sustainable water supply, sanitation, irrigation, and water resource management. But perhaps there is a defensible administrative explanation in each, but the mismatch is obvious enough to demand one. This matters because when projects are assigned to agencies without the relevant technical mandate, accountability becomes blurred. Who designs the project? Who supervises it? Who certifies quality? Who maintains it? And if it fails, whose responsibility is it? And of course, there's also the question economists call opportunity cost. Public money can be spent once, so consider 54.1 billion. UBEC's current school-based management committee school improvement program provides supporting categories ranging from 250,000 for micro projects to 2 million for macro school improvement projects and 5 million to 7 million for special case projects. At the upper 7 million UBEC support benchmark, 54.1 billion is equivalent to 1,700 school improvement interventions. That is not a claim or demand that Nigeria should simply cancel every religious account allocation and instantly build 7,700 schools. The comparison is illustrative. It tells you the scale of the money. Every billion spent on sectarian facility, therefore, raises an avoidable question. Could that money have financed healthcare, classroom, water, maternity care, vaccines, or other accessible services? Why is the government still involved in pilgrimage? pilgrim. Nigeria maintains both the National Hajj Commission and the Nigerian Christian Pilgrim Commission. So again, the policy is not exclusively Islamic, but the deeper question remains: why should government administer religious pilgrimage at all? There may be legitimate state functions, visas, international negotiations, aviation safety, consumer protection, coordination with foreign governments, but those functions are different from subsidizing the pilgrimage itself. Nigeria does not need another religious argument. It needs rules. First, every National Assembly in session should identify its sponsoring legislator. Second, every project benefiting a religious institution should state the beneficiary clearly. Third, government should distinguish between public service and a religious activity. A classroom available to every child is not the same thing as a sanctuary. A hospital treating everyone is not the same thing as an altar. A public road passing a mosque is not the same thing as building the mosque. Fourth, no MDA should receive constituency projects unless the project falls reasonably within the agency's legal mandate and technical capacity. And fifth, religiously connected projects should undergo an equity review, not because every naira must be divided mechanically 50-50 between Christian and Muslims, but because unexplained disparities can undermine public confidence. And finally, once a project is approved, Nigerians should be able to see the sponsor, the amount, the beneficiary, the contractor, the releases, the implementation status, and who owns the asset after completion. And so what does all this mean for Nigeria and its religious problems? In the detailed 2023 and 2024 federal appropriations data that we examined, we identified approximately 54.1 billion in religion-related provisions. Around 34.9 billion was Islam-related, and 12.7 billion was Christian-related. That is substantial imbalance. There may be legitimate explanations. The structure of Islamic education, federal pilgrimage institutions, constituency priorities, and differences between educational and purely devotional spending. But those explanations must be made publicly, because government neutrality is not demonstrated by merely saying we support all religions. It is demonstrated through transparent rules that treat citizens fairly. The bigger question, therefore, is not should Muslims get more or should Christians get an equal amount? Perhaps the most important question might be, why should taxpayers be financing explicitly devotional activity in the first place? And where public money legitimately enters religious institutions because the institution provides education, healthcare, or another public service, what rules guarantee equal access, accountability, and value for money? Nigeria's religious diversity is too sensitive to be managed through unexplained budget lines. If the National Assembly wants to insert projects, let Nigerians know who inserted them. If government wants to finance religious institutions, let it explain the public purpose. And if an agency is asked to implement a project outside what appears to be its mandate, let somebody explain why. Because when religion enters the budget without transparent rules, the argument is no longer just about faith. It is about power, public money, and equality before the Nigerian state. I am Rimamnde Shawulu. This is The Other Side. If you value evidence-based discussions like this, subscribe to the channel, share this video, and tell us your comments. Should Nigerian tax finance churches, mosques, and religious institutions? Or should public money be restricted to services accessible to everyone? And please keep the conversation factual and respectful. We'll see you on the other side.